Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, Upstream Color, the long-awaited second film from director Shane Carruth from Primer fame, and this is his big follow-up 9 years after that. It's a very strange, odd, hard film to describe, but I will do my best. It's about a girl, Chris, who has a successful job in a house until she is abducted one night and given Wrath of Khan-esque brainworm into her system, and she's kind of put in a trance and very controllable and susceptible to instruction, and she's instructed to do all sorts of bizarre things, and then has her bank accounts completely emptied, and this guy who gives her the worm takes all this money from her and the equity of her house and basically bankrupts her and destroys her and makes her his slave for several days. When she comes out of this weird slave haze in which she is also kind of operated on and kind of mentally joined with a pig, and she loses her job because she's been in this weird trance state for presumably, I mean, it had to have been more than 4 days, probably maybe a week. And so she loses her job because she just didn't show up for a week. She has to start all over, and then she meets Jeff, who's played by the director Shane Carruth. They kind of have an unnatural, bizarre attraction to one another, and he also had a similar situation happen to him, and he is also prey to these weird mind control worms, and they have a weird connection to one another where they suddenly kind of start to experience one another's memories, and they fall in love rather quickly and try to kind of figure out what happened to them in this weird haze of a bizarre, crazed, weird, strange science fiction movie. Shane Carruth, this is much like Primer, and if you've seen Primer, you know that it's the kind of film you can't get entirely on a first viewing, and an Upstream Color is a lot like that, where I feel like I actually did kind of get a lot of it, surprisingly, or I feel like I did. I don't know, maybe I'll watch it a couple more times and I'll be like, I was so off, it's ridiculous. And it's such a strange idea and concept for a film, but the way he photographs it and the way he tells it and the amazing sound design and everything. I mean, Shane Carruth basically did everything for this movie. He directed, he produced it, he wrote it, he's distributing it, he's acting in it, he did the cinematography, he did the music, he did everything. It's like kind of a crazed experiment. All his films, and including this one, have this weird DIY mad scientist kind of nature about them, and where in Primer you have the time machine in a storage space, and in this it's about this guy who owns all these pigs and is using these mind control. Each of the people who he puts the mind control stuff on is also kind of mentally joined with this pig in a weird way, and that character reminds me almost of Shane Carruth himself. There are these weird mad scientists, but in this DIY kind of post-internet age kind of mad scientist. This film kind of has a mad scientist way about it because it's so crazy. Everyone is saying this now about a lot of films like Spring Breakers and Terrence Malick and maybe even The Master a little bit have these fever dream qualities to it. I've never really had a fever dream, but I'm assuming that this is what fever dreams are like. It's a good way of describing kind of this kind of narrative. You feel like you're definitely experiencing the narrative, but you feel like parts are missing and you're just getting sensory parts. You're not being told in a normal kind of 3-act, very hand-holding way. This film is in advanced text. If you had trouble keeping up with Inception and you thought that movie was weird, you're about to have your mind blown by Upstream Color, because Upstream Color is a very complex science fiction film. I don't know if it's as complex as Primer, and I don't think it's as good as Primer, but it's definitely of that league of complication. This is Shane Carruth's second film. It kind of reeks of a sophomore film. It's the kind of film you can't just put out as your first film. It's very ambitious. He definitely has something to prove. He's been gone for 9 years, and despite making probably one of the best science fiction films to come out in the new millennia, he definitely did have something to prove. He needed to make a really audacious, amazing movie. This is a very unique kind of science fiction film, and in a time where sci-fi, it's mostly made to make blockbuster movies and big budget movies. You know, you don't see this kind of a voice behind science fiction. This reminds me of Rod Serling or The X-Files. Well-crafted, smartly written science fiction that you can pour over and really go into and see throughout what's going on in it. And I think Shane Carruth brings that to science fiction. He's one of the few real original voices that I really find to be a challenging writer and director, and challenging in a good way. With Primer, every time I've seen it, I feel like I'm peeling back layers, but I feel like there's so much more. With Upstream Color, I feel like that as well, but I think I kind of get what's going on. I mean, the weird brain worms and the trances that these people are put in, And it does feel like a mad scientist who's just inventing this weird way of controlling people, but he doesn't really know the effects of it. And unfortunately, Chris and Jeff are the unfortunate guinea pigs of this experiment, and how terrifying it is that you don't really know what's going on. And like sometimes they're sensing emotions that they don't entirely control, and it makes them go out of control. It's kind of like a science fiction romance, but there's a bit of horror in it that like you can't control yourself. That Jeff and Chris and all the other people who were affected by this kind of weird, bizarre science experiment don't know what happened to themselves. They don't know why this is happening. They were just, I'm assuming, picked at random. I'm curious if this film is kind of about identity theft in an interesting way, because you know, you look at these people, they were successful, they were fine, they were, you know, 9 to 5 normal people. They just were somehow unfortunately chosen to have their lives ruined. Is this a comment on identity theft in a way? It feels like it is. Shane Carruth, I hope he keeps making kind of weird science fiction films, because it gives me faith in a genre that there's so much more for science fiction as a genre to go into, and Shane Carruth is bringing the sci-fi genre to a point that it's not going otherwise. He's very adventurous with what he's doing with a genre that no one's really playing in this way. Primer was such a classic tale. Upstream Color, its weird, bizarre cousin, I think it's saying a lot about nature, even though it's showing something that's completely unnatural, which I think makes it a little more horrifying. The whole idea of what's going on, showing it in this like Terrence Malick-y way. I don't know if that's like an interesting comment on what they're doing. It's just such a strange idea and such an interesting idea, and I think it's saying a lot more than just being a strange, weird movie with pigs and worms and romance. And there's a lot in this movie. It's very dense. It's the kind of movie that people are going to pick through over and over and over and over again, and it's worth picking through over and over and over again. This film, I think, is a lot more about the ideas and the cinematography than the acting. I like Shane Carruth and I like Amy Seimetz's, but they're not really stars. I did quite like both of them, but I feel like he's not really an actor's director, he's more of an ideas director. But the ideas are so alive in this movie, it's not something that's really going to bother you. This is for your inner film nerd. This isn't for, you know, modern audiences, but that's what I like about Shane Carruth. This is a slow, weird cult movie director that's making the kind of complex science fiction that when you heard about when you were a kid and you'd imagine like, wow, that must be really super smart and I'll never be able to understand it. Shane Carruth is making the kind of films we always thought that complex science fiction was about, and making them a reality in a way that I didn't think we'd still be seeing in this day and age when we have things like Battleship and Prometheus. This is the real complex sci-fi. This is the kind of sci-fi that makes me think about the future of technology and the future of like bioengineering and the future of how people's lives will be destroyed by these kind of new ways of technology and the new ways of taking advantage of people. And there's a real fear of technology with Shane Carruth, you know, an interesting fear, an understanding fear, but a natural fear and a natural human element to why we should be fearful of that. Even though the way he's telling it is very strange and Terrence Malick-y and fever dreamish, there's a very well thought out, smartly authored science fiction tone to both this and Primer. Maybe more so than Primer, but it's definitely in Upstream Color as well. With everything else that's in here, and there's so many ideas, and he's such a great filmmaker, he's a great storyteller. And that's what's really at the heart of any great director, I think, is that you have a great storyteller. And he's a great storyteller, and he's a smart storyteller. And that's all on display with Upstream Color. And it's an interesting, kind of more challenging second film. He's definitely pushed the limits again. Upstream Color is just amazingly complex, strange, weird, bizarre little movie. So if you have seen Upstream Color and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.